Yes, before he was even old enough to take the SATs, Frank was already being prepared for life as an international spy. As chronicled at length in his book, Dux not only claims to be a master ninja and no-holds-barred fighting champion, but he's also apparently some kind of super top-secret CIA operative as well. From executing clandestine missions in Vietnam to fighting pirates in the Philippines, he's evidently lived out just about every action movie plot ever written. And despite the fact that his activities are so secret that absolutely nobody in the United States government has ever even heard of him, he's also won every single military accolade a person can get, including the Navy Cross, the Silver Star, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Medal of Honor, and the Purple Heart, even though his skin is made out of metal and he's totally impervious to injury. According to Dux, it was pretty much destiny that he would end up in espionage, as both his father and grandfather had been secret agent men. His grandfather, William, whom Frank asserts was an Austrian spy during World War I, had supposedly been the sniper who assassinated Australian General William Bridges in 1915. His father, Alfred, had been a member of the British Army's famous Jewish Brigade in 1939, which is rather odd considering the Jewish Brigade wasn't actually formed until 1944, but I digest. As I stated before, Dux started preparing for life as a spy when he was just 16 years old. Senzo Tanaka, realizing the youngster was fated for a life of action and intrigue after just 3 years of practicing dynamic tension in his backyard, decided to enlist the aid of a Green Beret to supplement his ninjutsu training. He was able to do this through his own extensive connections with the intelligence community, because apparently every single person Dux knew at this point in his life was either a spy or a special forces soldier. After learning all the requisite skills of a Metal Gear Solid boss, Dux enlisted in the military and soon became a decorated combatant in the Vietnam conflict. This is the point where the timeline of Dux's fantasy life starts to get really hazy and confusing. Direct U.S. military involvement in Vietnam ended in the March of 1973, but Dux would not have been eligible for overseas deployment until he turned 18 in the April of the following year. I guess he could have forged his birth certificate several years prior when he was 15 or 16 in order to see some action, but that would be the exact time in his story when he's supposed to be getting meat strapped to his body by an elderly Japanese man. Some of his stories seem to indicate that he joined the Marines in 1975 when he was 18 or 19, and then was deployed to Southeast Asia immediately after boot camp to execute some Rambo-style covert missions. We're not talking about just guarding U.S. embassies or evacuating Vietnamese citizens from Saigon here, but rather hardcore, highly classified combat missions, years after regular Marine operations in that region had ceased. The military was evidently satisfied enough with Dux's backyard ninja Green Beret training to send him off on these special assignments, despite the fact that he had no prior combat experience or advanced paramilitary instruction. In any case, though, 1975 appears to be a remarkably eventful year in the saga of Frank Dux. Every interview he's given appears to attribute some different significant life event to that particular period of time. Let's just take a moment to look at everything that supposedly occurred during that year. Number 1. His master Senzo Tanaka died, but not before he could give Dux a red-white belt in Koga Yamabushi Ninjutsu after his pupil had only been training for 6 years. Number 2. Dux founded his own system of ninjutsu called Dux Ninjutsu. Number 3. He started and completed boot camp for the Marines. Number 4. He was promoted to Lance Corporal, a rank that requires 9 months of active service to achieve. Number 5, he became a special tactics instructor for the Marines, a position that requires years of active service to achieve. Number 6, he attended the Naval Amphibious School in California, where he studied the Korean art of Hwarang-do. Number 7, he participated in some kind of secret mission in Laos called Operation Sanction, where he was stabbed in the stomach with a bayonet. And number 8, amidst all this shit, he traveled to the Bahamas to fight in the Kumite. Apparently, despite all the obligations he had during this period of time, he still managed to squeeze in enough training to be able to defeat 56 world-class fighters over the span of 3 days. A few years down the line in this fictional chronology during the early 80s, Dux was recruited in a hotel bathroom by CIA Director William J. Casey to perform even more clandestine intelligence work. Casey needed a, quote, badass who don't take no shit from any motherfucker to do the missions other secret agents couldn't perform, and he thought Dux was just the man for the job. According to The Secret Man, Frank was to become an echo, somebody so far inside he's outside, an agent whom only Director Casey would know about. The fact that Dux had appeared in multiple internationally distributed martial arts magazines openly discussing his supposed intelligence career apparently didn't tarnish his viability as a super-secret agent. Just for the record, William J. Casey was the real-life director of the CIA from 1981 to 1987. Conveniently, he was dead at the time Dux published The Secret Man, so he was in no condition to contradict any of the claims Frank made about him. General Stormin Norman Schwarzkopf and Major General John Singlab, 2 other real people Dux featured in his book, however, were alive to give their side of the story, and they weren't too happy about the bullshit Frank said about them. Singlab, who denied ever having even met Dux, claims the book was an insult to one's intelligence. Oliver North was another real-life individual Dux featured in his Tom Clancy fan fiction novel. The Backyard Ninja Master claims the United States Marine Corps Lieutenant Corporal was the mastermind behind a massive campaign to discredit him following the success of Bloodsport. Apparently, anybody who has ever tried to debunk Dux, from John Johnson in his famous 1988 LA Times expose to the narrator of the video you're watching right now, is just a part of this gigantic conspiracy trying to prevent Frank's accomplishments from being known to the world at large. The United States government, although willing to give Dux the motherfucking Medal of Honor and allow him to publicly disclose an extensive amount of information regarding highly classified operations he was supposedly involved with, evidently hated him for some reason and wanted people to just think he was a nut. According to Dux, the conspiracy runs incredibly deep. If you request his official military records via the Freedom of Information Act, for instance, the documents you'll receive give no indication that his Vietnam exploits or intelligence career ever occurred. Although the records do admit Dux was with the Marine Corps Reserve from 1975 to 1981, they state that he only served 130 days of active duty and was never shipped overseas. His primary duty was just listed as wireman. Damn, Oliver North must have really wanted to kill Dux's credibility. I don't know why he didn't just go the whole 9 yards and delete Dux's military records entirely. In addition to all this shit, there's also a note in Frank's health record that states he was committed to a psychiatric evaluation in 1978 for expressing flighty and disconnected ideas. Yep. And, on that note, I think it's time we got to discussing Frank Dux's most famous fictional invention, the Kumite, also known as the Kumite.